snap some pictures. And there was some drywall down, so that could have been from him. So it was just the ultra-conservative approach was what was decided on. I was the lone holdout on that, but I don't want that. It all happened.
You guys got
nobody got hurt.
The decision, I assume, and everything, right? Put up a united front.
Yep.
All right, we're probably ready to go here.
Where's Poker Run playing cards from? Hi, Betsy. We get them from Design Advertising here at Beaver Dam. They have all kinds of promotional products. They can print our name on anything.
Oh, yes, I know the folks at Design Advertising. They made the graphics for my on-lit time sign in Fox Place.
John's radio station.
Hey, John, Betsy again. I also need to order T-shirts for an event. Where do we get the Poker Run T-shirts from?
We also get our T-shirts from Design Advertising. They print the shirts for other events, too. Give Nancy a call. She takes great care of me. She'll take good care of you, too.
John, it's Leslie. Where do we get the signs for the 95 Days of Summer?
Well, Leslie, we get those from Design Advertising. Call us at 885-3100. Design Advertising, they'll put your name on.
Feel free to make yourself comfortable in whatever your best side is.
You get me used to this, I got the face for radio.
How many presents?
Hey, did you mean to? We're sending this audio to that. It should be getting the radio right now. Oh, hang on, that's fine.
Oh, I forgot to check on that. Because it's on remote too. Oh, and this has got to be online. Automatic manual.
This is separate. I should be sending you audio.
Yeah, I'm not getting audio. I'm not getting any audio. Is the board on?
I can hear you up there, but I can also hear. I can hear you in the board, but I can also hear you guys chat in the video.
Testing. You can hear us chatting in the video.
Double check again.
So Mike needs to be online manual.
Automatic. I should be sending you audio.
It's weird. It's not getting it. Did I plug the right one in? Yeah. Input 1. Line.
Let's sign off.
SetPad is now covered by Medicare. Call your physician to discuss SetPad and learn more at bdch.com/PAD.
It's that time of year again for the WBEV WXRO South Central Wisconsin Career Fair, being held March 12th at the Dodge County Airport in Juneau. If you're searching for that great career, the 2019 WBEV WXRO South Central Wisconsin Career Fair is the perfect place to seek out many new opportunities. This year's event will welcome all job seekers plus juniors and seniors from area high schools. Adult job seekers who would like help with your resume and interview skills can attend a free walk-in clinic presented by the Work Smart Network, held on March 5th at Moraine Park Technical College in Beaver Dam from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. The WBEV WXRO South Central Wisconsin Career Fair will be at the Dodge County Airport in Juneau from 10:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesday, March 12th. For times, dates, and more information, you can always go on to dailydodge.com and click on Career Fair.
1236 from AM 1430 WBEV. Streaming online at dailydodge.com. It is time now for today's community comment. Here's your host, Craig Warmbold.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon. Welcome to Community Comment. It was 1 year ago today that a fatal explosion at the Village Glen Apartments in Beaver Dam sparked an 11-day ordeal that culminated with the controlled burn of the entire building as the only means of mitigating the highly volatile chemicals found inside. Our guest on today's community comment program is the head of the agency that basically spearheaded that effort to put that controlled burn into place in conjunction with multiple local, state, and federal agencies. We want to welcome into the conversation Beaver Dam Fire Chief Alan Mannel. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Craig.
A note to our listeners on AM 1430 WBEV, if you've got internet access, we encourage you to check out the video stream live at dailydodge.com right now. And of course, this will be available in audio and video format at dailydodge.com upon the completion of today's program. A rather fortuitous day here 1 year later after this incident that, again, started with a explosion from a kid playing around with some homemade, highly volatile chemicals. Where were you a year ago today about this time, Chief?
I was in my office working, and I hear the police get dispatched to a explosion in the Village Glen Apartments, and within a second or two our fire tones are going out, and I responded from the station. Deputy Chief Christian was on the road doing an inspection, and he responded to the scene as well. So he got there a few minutes before I did and established incident command, which is our protocol. And I arrived a few minutes later and assumed the operations role, operations chief. And one of our paid-on-call members lived in the subdivision across the street, Mike Daney. He got there, suited up, and there was a small fire on the stairs, so he was able to extinguish the small fire with the fire extinguisher from Matt's fire car. While Mike was upstairs, he reported back to me that the fire was out and that there was an obvious blood spatter on the wall. So we prepared to monitor the air and send a crew in for search and rescue, which we were able to do fairly rapidly. We determined that the air was clear of any known explosives, like gas. You know, when we arrive on a situation like that, one of our first thoughts is a natural gas explosion. Fortunately, Matt's been around for a while. He was the fire inspector when that building was built, and he knew that there was only gas in the utility building on the far west side of the building. All the appliances and heat was electric. So we were able to rule out natural gas fairly rapidly. So the next thing we're thinking is, okay, maybe somebody's making some drugs here. So we started thinking that direction, and the firefighter, John Jacek, he was doing the air monitoring. He reported back to me that something's not right here. We just got, it's not a normal, if there is such a thing, a normal drug house. It appeared that aside from the damage from the explosion, the apartment appeared to be otherwise fairly neatly kept, you know, bed made, clothes hanging in the closet and so forth. And he also mentioned that there were some suspicious looking containers in a small dorm style refrigerator with rubber gloves over the top of them. So at that point, I went to the top of the stairs, looked around, and said, you know what, this just isn't adding up. Let's get out of here. So we backed out and had a conversation with the police department, Chief Kreitzinger and Lieutenant Gebhardt, and explained our high level of concern. And pretty much the fire department part of that event was coming to an end, and we had a good conversation. We had a high level of suspicion that there was something going on here that just didn't meet the eye, and they agreed. And at that point, I think that's when they called in the state fire marshal and DCI, criminal investigation people, and were able to make a better determination a little bit down the road.
What was the nature of the fire department's role then? That the rest of that day and up through the first detonation of the chemicals, which would have taken place that Thursday.
All right. We got called back to the scene by the police department to evacuate the apartment building areas, the Keystone and the Village Glen Apartments, and also the Prairie Ridge Assisted Living Facility. So in total, we evacuated 228 people. 9 of them were by ambulance. So it was actually a second large event in one day. You know, the bombing and then the evacuation of the apartment buildings and the assisted care facility. So the first time we called mutual aid from our neighbors, we had to bring those people out by ambulance, and of course, Mother Nature threw a curveball at us, right? Just before we start that, we get the 5 or 6 inches of heavy, wet snow, which is always fun to deal with. So we got back together with Chief Kreitzinger later that evening after they met with some of the players and knew that it was an explosive, and we really didn't have a clear idea at all what we were dealing with, what resources were going to be available. We kind of looked at each other and shrugged our shoulders, and the next official thing was the next morning where the FBI and the ATF and bomb squad people were going to get together. They call them sit reps, situation reports. They had one every morning and every evening, and I was invited to that. So I think it was at 9 o'clock. We were all getting back together the Tuesday morning after the explosion, and I'm not really paying attention to the cars in the parking lot and things like that. So I walk in, and it's a room probably 50 by 50, and there was at least 25, 30 people in there, and I think the sheriff and the police chief and myself were the only ones not wearing suits. It was very apparent that the level of urgency had increased dramatically, and that a lot of resources were being brought to bear on our situation. So it ended up I don't think the police department ever was not in command of the situation. I think the FBI was a resource, but they were certainly the one steering the ship. So they had conference call set up with Quantico, Virginia, FBI headquarters, Washington, D.C., and we had explosive experts from those agencies on the other end of the phone, and they're basically telling us that we've got a big problem. That one of the comments was that this is the worst explosive contamination in the United States that they've dealt with, and the only one other similar was in Escondido, California in 2010, and they burned that building to the ground. And just before that, the mystery voice on the phone says, "Is the fire chief in the room?" And the FBI special agent in charge said, "Yeah, he is." And they said, "Talk to him about Escondido and what they had to do there." So thermal destruction of the building, actually the apartment, I hadn't quite wrapped that thought of burning the whole building down around my head yet. So we're thinking now, okay, how are we going to burn this apartment without burning the whole building down? So they said, well, we're still looking at options, and finally the decision was made that they were going to do the controlled detonation, which they had hoped would detonate all the explosives in the apartment. So we had to do some work for them. They wanted a hole in the roof, that we cut the hole in the roof.
You guys cut the hole in the
Right. Yeah. And they were very clear, don't drop any tools or debris into the hole, because this explosive is very shock sensitive, and just walking on it can set it off. So we were able to do the hole for them. They also asked for sandbags, so they were going to put sandbags around the area that they were going to blow up to direct the blast upwards, and we got ready for the controlled detonation, which I believe occurred on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sorry, it was Wednesday.
Yeah.
And in your role in the actual detonation, now just to clarify for our listeners, there was the primary explosion on Monday around 1 o'clock. On Wednesday, there was the planned detonation of those explosives.
Right.
And what I got confused about Thursday, there was another, if I'm not mistaken, it was either
Accidental.
Wednesday night, there was an accident. Everybody thought everything was okay from the detonation, not to get
Right.
too far ahead. But then on Thursday,
Right.
there was an accidental explosion, and that's kind of when everybody went,
Whoa, yeah.
yeah, we're not going to be going back in this building.
Right. When we had the controlled detonation was going to go off at 1 o'clock on Wednesday, so we were on the scene. They had given us a warning that there's a remote chance of a fire after the controlled detonation. So we took that opportunity to pre-plan it. We had hose lines pre-deployed. We had crews on scene, an engine crew and an ambulance crew in case somebody got hurt. So we were prepared for a fire.
Just your agency?
Right.
Not
Yeah.
the multiple agencies we would see
Correct.
a week later.
Right. It was just us. They said just a remote chance. Doesn't always happen, rarely happens. But of course, after the controlled detonation, we started noticing the tan smoke from the explosive started turning to gray, and the velocity and the quantity of smoke is increasing, and that's when it's like, okay, this place is on fire. So then we had to go. The plan was the FBI said we're going to give it a 1 hour cool down period before we go back in and look, and so we're probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes after the explosion, and we've got the controlled detonation. We've got a working fire in that apartment. So the plan was to only attack it from the outside. The FBI had given us the warning not to go in, which we were more than happy to comply with. So we had a construction lift on scene that the guys used as an elevated advantage with a hose line, and we went into the apartment to the south of apartment 11 via the stairs, just to the top of the stairs to actually get the fire put out. And at first we were hitting it from the outside, and we were not able to bring it under control. And so we conferred with the bomb technicians, and they said, yeah, you can go in, but just to the top of the stairs. No further, and the guys were able to knock the fire down from the top of the stairs of the apartment behind and from the outside on the north side.
I forget, do we know or not know that there are 13 jars of TATP in the apartment at this time?
We knew, and that's what they were blowing up with the controlled
That's
detonation.
what was, in theory,
Right.
and it did. Did it take care of those 13 jars, as far as we know?
We're not sure. Obviously, I don't think it took care of all of it, because some of it blew up again the next day.
Right.
So one of the crazy things about this explosive is while it's being made, sometimes it's volatile, sometimes it isn't. So we're not completely sure, at least I'm not, if the controlled detonation took care of everything. I definitely believe that it was their best shot at the time. It's one of them adaptive or wicked problems that there's really no great answer for, only bad solutions. And I believe it was their best shot. They explained it all to us, and it's like, well, there's really no other way to deal with it.
And one of the things I think the public is kind of learning for the first time with the recent release of documents and the conclusion of the police department's investigation, which, by the way, you can find all of the documents, the photos, the video, drone, ground level, thermal videos at dailydodge.com. It's on today's news page. 100% of the records that were released by the police department are there. One of the things the public is starting to learn is that kind of from day one, there was the knowledge, first of all, that you were dealing with TATP. It was several days before that came out, I think, in the media. And pretty much from day one, a controlled burn was not just the detonation, but the controlled burn of the whole facility was floated from the beginning.
Right. It was put out there for us. Again, they were hoping that they could deal with things in other ways, but they kind of gave us the warning right up front that this is potentially going to have to happen.
So day 3, you've got the detonation. Day 4, the second or third explosion, the accidental one.
Right.
And it's around this time that they say we're going to have to move to Plan B. We're going to have to go with the controlled burn.
Right. So after the controlled detonation, the FBI asked us to arrange a local construction company to shore up the floor, because the controlled detonation blew a pretty sizable hole in the floor. So that we had Dietz Construction, local company, came out and they built 2 walls between the first floor and the second floor to hold up the second floor, basically, so that the FBI could go, the bomb squad people could go back in and check the cabinets, because there was the stove was on. We noticed when we went up the stairs that the stove was on, the lights on the stove, so the oven was of concern. There could have been a sizable amount of explosives still in the oven that they weren't able to clear. So the bomb people apparently weren't too terribly concerned about that, because they didn't ask us to stand by that day. So they were clearing a path to the oven with a plastic garden rake so that they could get there and visually clear the stove for any more explosives when several other small explosions took place. It was enough to badly damage the garden rake, and they called back for an ambulance to come check out the bomb technicians who were complaining of ringing in the ears and things like that. So we get there, and again, there was you could tell the level of concern on the faces of the FBI people. The special agent in charge, Dan Day, he asked to have a meeting with the city decision makers, and we all got together on scene, and he took us up in the scissors lift, and he's showing us areas because the wall was blown away, so you could see in there pretty well. And he basically said that we're done here. This is too dangerous to deal with. We have no idea where this product is, and you need to plan on burning this entire building to the ground.
Was there a concern that there may be chemicals not just dispersed but perhaps intentionally located throughout Building 109?
I was never.
Of an attic that went over.
There was an open attic upstairs that the firewall had been either removed or blown away. So the attic space was open. No telling what this guy had, where he had it. So the decision makers, we had been in contact with the city attorney, director of administration, the insurance company for the city, pretty much early on as to when we started thinking that this is a possibility, we're going to have to burn this place. So we had all the decision makers together, and we just all decided on the conservative approach, nobody in, nothing out, and that's what the FBI recommended. So I guess, who are we to not heed the advice of the FBI and the Dane County bomb people? And so we took their advice, and that was the plan that was carried out.
Yeah,
and it was very agonizing, the decision making. We spent hours and hours with the police chief, myself, city attorney, the director of administration, Summers, emergency management, the health people from Dodge County. Again, agonizing over this decision. It's like, how is the best way to do this? How do we break it to the people? It was a horrible situation.
You're dealing with people's entire lives.
Absolutely.
Here.
Absolutely.
16-unit apartment complex.
Right.
15 neighbors who, some had animals.
Right.
That were in the buildings
Mm-hmm.
that were eventually rescued.
Right.
And we'll get to the part about them assuming they would lose everything. And there was a silver lining for them there with that. Going back to what you were saying about reinforcing the floor, so you actually had a construction type crew come in
Yep.
and reinforce into the building. That seems like a lot of hammers flying when we're talking about not even allowing people to walk around on the other side of the building.
Right. That again, that was on the recommendation of the FBI, and it's like, are you sure you want to do this? And so we can't go in if we don't. And I think at that point they were hoping that all of the explosives had been mitigated by the controlled detonation. Mm-hmm. And in hindsight, yeah, the people were exposed. But at the time, I don't think they knew there was this the residual chemicals or explosives still inside.
Another thing we're learning from the release of the documents from the police department is really the role that the refrigerator that had blown open partially and revealed some antifreeze and other chemicals in the oven had played. We as lay people didn't really quite understand that, I guess, relationship between those two. And you're not a bomb expert or a chemical making expert, but we get the idea that he was certainly in the active process of maybe moving from the fridge to the oven to perhaps bake things. That was kind of the general assumption there.
Yeah.
When this happened. Again, March 5th, 2018, the Village Glen Apartments. Our guest here is Beaver Dam Fire Chief Alan Mannel. We are streaming live here at dailydodge.com in audio and video. And we would encourage you to go to dailydodge.com if you'd like to check out a historical retrospective of all of the video that we put together from press conferences, from our interviews just like this here on WBEV's Community Comment over the last year, and of the actual controlled detonation itself, a multi-hour process that we're going to talk about the chief with here in just a few minutes, in addition to that detonation that we talked about from day 3, that Wednesday. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back on our next segment, I think we're going to dive headlong into the conversation about that controlled burn. You heard the chief say, and this is I hadn't realized that, but you didn't really wrap your brain around the idea that this would be an entire apartment building
right.
that you would be burning down. You're thinking about burning an apartment, a single
Or a
unit,
portion of it,
or a
or,
portion. We'll continue this conversation here after the break with Beaver Dam Fire Chief Alan Mannel.
Farmers, you can farm 40 acres of corn free. Sign up on one of the WBEV WXRO Farm 40 free participating sponsors. The grand prize is enough young seed genetic seed corn for 40 acres, plus use of a tractor from Farmers Implement of Columbus. Get all the details at dailydodge.com and at these Farm 40 locations. Farmers and Merchants Union Bank in Columbus, Fall River, Ryle, Friesland, and Juneau. Young Seed Genetics of Randolph. Jeans Tires of Beaver Dam. Farmers Implement of Columbus. Central Ag Supply of Juneau and Baraboo. Farmers and Merchants Union Bank and Baldwin Implement of Beaver Dam and Waupun.
On your mark, ready, set, bingo! You could win $500. It's time to pull up the card table, set out the markers, put on the sweatband, and play Radio Bingo. Here on WBEV at 1:35 p.m. every Monday through Friday. WBEV awards a daily cash prize of $25. But if you cover all the numbers on your card in the first 50 numbers called, the cash prize is $500. Multiple winners divide the money equally. Get your bingo cards at these Beaver Dam locations: Recheck's Food Pride, Get Fit Health Club, and Edith's Cakes Catering and Cafe. Find your bingo cards in Columbus at Larson House Assisted Living, NWS Ag Center on Temkin Road. Cards can also be had at Randolph Health Services and Assisted Living, Horicon Hardware Hank, Leroy Meats in Fox Lake, and Waupun Piggly Wiggly. Visit any of these locations for your free bingo cards, then play Radio Bingo. You could win $500 cash every Monday through Friday at 1:35 p.m. on AM 1430 WBEV.
Do you love pets and pasta? Frosty's Foster's Animal Rescue of Beaver Dam is having a dine-out night with Benvenitos of Beaver Dam. Come enjoy a meal at Benvenitos on Tuesday, March 19th, between 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Just mention Frosty's Foster's to your server, and they will donate 20% of all sales for that day. Frosty's Foster's is a non-for-profit animal rescue group. We rescue animals from high-risk kill shelters and get them adopted to loving homes. Hope to see you there.
From a little snow won't stop me season to this snowblower can handle it season. Fleet Farm has everything you need because right now it's make sure my tires have traction season. Let's get this house toasty season. Break out the shovel again season. De-ice the step season. And of course, time to bundle up season. Fleet Farm is built for every season. Fleet Farm, built for real life.
What's it like to see the world after years of cataracts? For Jenny, her visit to Vita Park Eye Associates was life-changing.
Oh my gosh, there are no words to explain. Even when I had the cataract removed on the first eye, things in my house were bright and colorful. I went to the grocery store. Everything was so bright and colorful and clear. Oh, there are no words to describe. Oh, I would definitely recommend Vita Park Associates in Beaver Dam. They explained everything in detail. They let me know if my eyes were suitable for this kind of surgery or not. Were very honest and forthcoming, and I had time to decide if I wanted to or not, and so on. Oh, I would recommend them to anybody that had any eye issues.
Visit VitaParkEye.com and see how your eyes can seriously improve with age. Partially covered by Medicare, results may vary.
1 minute after 1 o'clock from AM 1430 WBEV. Time for a new battery. Pull into the quick lane service at Countryside Ford in Columbus. Appointment necessary. Countryside Ford, 330 Transit Road, Columbus. Time once again for more of today's community comment. Here is your host, Craig Warmbold.
And our guest is Beaver Dam Fire Chief Alan Mannel. here talking about the 11-day ordeal around the Village Glen Apartments that started with a fatal explosion. A young man tinkering with very highly volatile chemicals killed himself, and again, it sparked that 11-day ordeal that culminated with the controlled burn of the entire building, the only means of mitigating the highly volatile chemicals found inside per the federal government, FBI, the Dane County Bomb Squad. Very difficult decision.
All the bomb experts.
And what we're talking about today is something that's not unlike what you go around and talk to some other fire departments around the country now, as I understand. You were just in Illinois, if I'm not mistaken?
Right. It was such an unusual event that our peers are asking to learn about it. And when we were in the planning phase, the night that we discovered that we were going to have to burn the building down, we again were overwhelmed. There's no other way to say it. The police chief and I are looking at each other, and it's like, how are we going to pull this off? Just knowing the local resources and the resources that were going to be needed, we made a joint decision that we were going to call in a state incident management team. So that has to come through emergency management. So Amy Nails was in the area. We met up with her, and it's like, we're going to need a lot of help with this. And she put through the request for the incident management team. So I went home and went through the memory bank of peers that have gone through several or anything like this, and I remembered that the city of Madison had a bomb-making thing going on without a detonation a few hours. So I reached out to Chief Steve Davis from the Madison Fire Department. He gave me a lot of great advice. I reached out to Chief Cody Doucette from the Cambria Fire Department. He was the incident commander of the Didion Milling explosion, and I know they had a lot of technical rescue, structural collapse people out there. So I was still hoping to be able to go in and get people's property, and we would have needed a structural evaluation of the building. So I'm up to 1 or 2 in the morning talking to people. One other person that both Chief Davis and Chief Doucette recommended was a major with the 54 Civil Support Team, National Guard. So I'm, again, midnight, whatever it was, talking to him on the phone about this TATP stuff. One thing that I was having a hard time dealing with and wrapping my head around is, okay, the chemicals inside of this building have been through 3 explosions and a fire. How is what is left still dangerous? I just couldn't understand that. So this major from the National Guard, who I believe is a PhD chemist, explosive expert, talked for about a half hour and told me how it can remain dangerous. And I could never in a million years repeat what he said. But the Reader's Digest version is because it can. This is why nobody uses this stuff. The terrorists don't even use it unless they can't come up with anything better, because they tend to blow themselves up with it. So the next day, I think it was Friday, we're just getting things ready for the incident management team to come in on Saturday. We met Saturday and Sunday. There was people from DNR. The gentleman that headed the incident management team was from DNR. They brought in public information officers. They brought in the EPA, basically all the players necessary. Emergency managers from other jurisdictions. Again, the EPA, we had our mutual aid people. Wisconsin Mabus was represented. Our local Mabus district president, Chief Kurt Inman from Juneau, was there. All these people were instrumental in putting things together to make this a successful outcome. The police chief and I think, were both on the same page that this was probably the best decision we made during the whole thing, was to call in the incident management team. They had a lot of resources. Chris Holhall, the DNR guy that was in charge of the incident management team, I'm pretty sure he could have got a hold of Donald Trump on his cell phone if he wanted to. This guy could get a hold of anybody. Resources were amazing.
You referenced the Madison bomb making incident just a few minutes ago, and again, we didn't call you here as the bomb making expert necessarily, but what is it that separates your typical bomb making situation, which we do hear about from time to time, from this situation? I mean, the guy was making bombs. It's the TATP at the end of the day.
I have no idea what anybody was up to.
So the planning is taking place pretty much from that Friday, and this happens the following Thursday, originally scheduled for Wednesday.
Right.
Good interagency cooperation taking place at this point.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody would be foolish to think that there wasn't a little head button now and again. I kept bringing up the personal property retrieval. Again, the fire service is protecting lives and property. The thought of burning somebody's property intentionally is counterintuitive. But at the end of the day, I think everybody got along very well. County, state resources worked really well with the sheriff's department and Dodge County Emergency Management, the health department people. Everybody was playing a huge role, dealing with the media, dealing with the tenants. And the tenants were phenomenal. The people that had the most to lose were the most gracious. The 109 and the 113 people, we met with them separately on a few occasions because they needed the personal touch. They needed to know that what we were doing. I believe that, and we know about media relations and public information officers and so forth, but the people from the DNR, they sent 2 PIOs out, and they were phenomenal. They helped us plan our meetings with the people, and not what to say, but how to say it. What should we talk about first? And nobody was lied to, nobody was played. It was talk to them like you're talking to a friend and explain it all. The night that when we discovered that we were going to have to burn the building down, we had the family intake center at St. Catherine Drexel Parish, the meeting room in the basement. And when we talked to the people, I remember the sheriff, Amy Nails, Chief Kreitziger, and myself up front talking to the people and telling them what we were going to have to do. You could see them going through the 5 stages of grief right before our eyes, and everybody's in tears. We were in tears. The people. It was horrible, but the people really came together as a group, and they are just phenomenal people. We had at one point, I believe the gentleman that lived in the apartment below who lost everything. There was no doubt that he was going to get nothing back. I'm summarizing, but he said, "You know what? You guys have nothing to be ashamed about, nothing to be worried about. You're keeping us safe." They thanked us and they led a round of applause for us, and we just got done telling them we're going to burn their property. And then you had people from 3 or 4 blocks away complaining about the Taco Bell was left to be open for whatever reason. I'm not sure what the decision process was at. It wasn't part of my
People
thing.
on the outside seem to be much more shooken up by the fact.
Yeah.
Belligerent is the word
A few people were belligerent, and it's like, really? In fact, we ended up meeting with the 109 and the 113 people separately, I think, because they were wearing on the belligerent people were wearing on the ones that really stand to lose something.
Well, it doesn't make sense that you could have these carpenters come in and reinforce the floor. You've got these 13 jars of TATP. You've got FBN on the far west side of the building. You can't go in and grab some personal effects. That's got to be from the outside. That seems frustrating.
Very frustrating. I mean, I have 50 firefighters that say, "Well, we want to go in," and I remember the meeting with the decision process. It's can you guarantee us absolute safety? And it's like, no, I can't. I don't know enough about this stuff. This is the experts are telling us this, but if we do go in, I'll be the first one through the door. And we were pretty much a group decision that it was just not safe enough to do it. And at the end of the day, nobody got hurt. It was a win, I guess.
Was there ever an enter at your own risk option for the tenants that was floated, or anything along those lines?
Oh, it was discussed at some point, but it was quickly overruled. That was
Who overruled?
Well, it was the joint decision, and not overruled. It was just that it was not safe. It just was not ever safe.
Even the far west side of the building.
Right.
So, how do you plan on burning down a 16-unit apartment building? What's the strategy that goes into that?
Well, we've got a training standard for live fire trainings, and we decided that it was going to be followed as closely as we could. We had to call our MABUS coordinators, had to put together a small army of firefighters to do this. One of the things about a live burn is you have to have redundant water supplies in case your water main system goes down. So we had our plan A was to use the city hydrants, city water mains, but we had to have a plan B if a water main break was to occur. So we had 2 strike teams of water tender trucks, one from Dodge County and then another team from Sauk and Columbia County. They had I believe it was six or seven tenders from the other Columbias. I think the furthest one away was Spring Green, which is about 75 miles. So our neighbors really did us a solid. We had 132 firefighters and I believe 27 agencies that came and helped us.
In your agency and all these other agencies have undertaken controlled burns to a much more rudimentary basic degree, I imagine. The idea of a controlled burn is not foreign to any of you guys.
No, we frequently do. Once or twice a year we'll have an acquired structure that we burn down for training, and we use those principles to treat it as much as we could. Obviously nobody went in to the building to fight it. Firefighting on the 109 building was never an option. We couldn't use accelerants because if there was some of the explosives that could react with any gasoline that we put in. So we lit it with the railroad fusees, one on each side, and that was by far the toughest order I've ever had to give, was light it, because we had a unified command. At different points I was in charge, at different points the police department was in charge. So when it came down to controlled burn day, I was the incident commander, and it was my responsibility to burn the building. So it all fell together well. Lee Smith is our training officer. We had to keep in mind our incident command basics, span of control. So I delegated the burn plan to Lee Smith. Him and Deputy Chief Christian worked together on that. One thing we were having trouble with is how are we going to keep the 113 building from burning in the 109 building. Chief Christian and one of his friends, Andy Kane, who's on the Lowell Fire Department, they came up with the idea of the shipping containers, which was another huge decision in this process. That was probably when that idea came up, that was probably the first halfway decent night of sleep I got during this whole event, because they make fire training facilities out of those shipping containers. So it's like that's brilliant.
So to put that in perspective, you got Building 109, which is where all this happened. Building 113 is
20 feet.
20 feet.
20 feet.
For kind of like from tip to tip, if you will.
Right.
And the concern was the fire would spread.
Absolutely.
And Andy Kane, shipping containers.
Andy Kane and Matt Christian.
And Matt Christian, shipping containers.
Right.
And so those that watch the video, and again, you could see video from not just law enforcement and emergency personnel, but our video taken from the Fleet Farm parking lot with the rest of the media personnel. You see when you watch that a steady stream of water being concentrated the whole time, which caused a little bit of confusion with some people that didn't realize. They thought maybe you were putting the fire out, but that stream of fire was for
the 113.
Building 113.
And the garages. We had 2 aerials, Juno's aerial and our aerial were flowing water. We had 12 ground monitors flowing water on different portions of the building. Again, at the end of the day, collateral damage was minimal. You can still go over there and see some of the siding curled up on a couple of the buildings, but all in all, that was a win.
So the actual ignition, though, is a fairly short conversation. It's you light a couple flares, you throw it in, and you walk away, and
Right.
you see what happens.
Right.
and it worked.
It did.
Didn't take two. Did it progress the way you had anticipated?
It took a little longer to get going than I had hoped. Once a fire burns for a little bit of time, you get the thermal uplift, and you get the smoke going higher. The smoke stayed down to the ground a little longer than we hoped, or than we had hoped for, but again, it wasn't a huge factor.
So again, you guys have undertaken controlled burns. Does a firefighter at any level of training that may be involved in this, are you able to actually attain an education in the way fire will move? Can you anticipate
Yes.
fire?
Yes, you take a lot of things, the building construction, the layout of the building, the wind direction, even temperature and humidity plays a factor. The reason we had to push it back a day is that the original plan was for Wednesday the 14th. We ended up pushing it back to Thursday. The predicted weather from the day we started planning to the day before changed drastically, and that would have been, the wind direction would have been much too strong and in a bad direction, that it would have pushed it towards the neighboring apartments. So we made the tough decision of pushing it back a day, which means we had to reschedule all of our mutual aid people from one day to the other. And again, I can't say enough about the people that came out to help us. We met at 7 o'clock that morning at the fire station, all 132 firefighters, for a safety briefing and to explain the burn plan. And I heard several people saying, yeah, I took a day off work to come here and do this. So we owe a huge debt of gratitude to our neighbors that came out and helped us. That's, again, one of the reasons I'm more than willing to go out and talk to people about how we did it, because the presentation I did for Illinois MABUS was the first presentation I've made where there wasn't somebody in the audience that was here. So, again, I can't thank our neighbors enough.
And if, God forbid, something like this ever happens again, I imagine your expertise is going to be very important in the unraveling of that situation.
We would be there for them, for sure.
So anytime that you have an incident and when you have to train for stuff like this, I imagine you always train for variables. You can expect a few curveballs thrown at you.
Oh, yeah.
Was this situation any different?
I'm going to refer to my notes. We had so many curveballs.
Really?
Well, the first night you had the snowstorm that nailed us. We had to get sandbags from DPW. That's not something we had the working fire after the explosion. The shoring walls that we had to arrange for, the burn date. We actually had a few EPA complaints. People make a complaint about this to the EPA. There were people that thought we didn't need to be doing what we were doing. So I had to go online and answer those complaints. So that was something we, the evacuation, when we evacuated that night, we probably didn't give enough information. There's things we know now about the evacuation. You tell people to take their P's with them, your pills, your purses, your pets, and your phone. We had to go back and get pets. People will die for their pets, so we had to go back in and get the pets. And that was, again, it was early enough. We didn't really know what we were dealing with to a greater extent, and we were able to go in and get their pets. But it ended up being another curveball that we had to deal with. A good thing, we had to relocate our community meeting. It was originally set up for at the Beaver Dam High School. Well, the girls won the basketball tournament, so the pep rally was, the school needed their facility, so we had to go to one of the local churches. Not a huge deal, but it was a good one.
You have to be ready for that type of...
Right. The personal property retrieval, we agonized over that. That was horrible. But again, at the last minute, one of the other curveballs ended up being a good one, as the FBI came in and said, okay, we've decided we need to go back into that building and do a sweep for loaded weapons. If somebody had a 308 rifle loaded in their closet, it could go off and kill somebody 2 blocks away. So they wanted to go out there, and they wanted to, again, see if they could find any more explosives. And they decided while they were in there that they could get some personal property from the people. which I believe was a huge win for the people. Again, like, we were agonizing over the decisions. So we met I believe it was the Wednesday that was originally scheduled for the burn date. The FBI went into Fleet Farm, bought, I believe, 2 totes, big Rubbermaid totes per apartment, and they had meetings with the people. It's got to fit in here. Where's your jewelry box? Where's your passports? Where are your green cards? There were people that had immigration issues, and apparently getting a green card it's not as simple as going to the DMV and getting a replacement driver's license. It's like an act of Congress. So we were able to get some people's important things, and we were worried that, okay, this has been a roller coaster for almost 2 weeks now. Are we pulling the scab off? And we had to meet with different groups of people because it was last minute. When can you be here? We need to talk to you. So it was onesies and twosies, and I was at a couple of those meetings, and the reaction when the people found out that they could get their jewelry box, their passport, their green card, it was amazing, and the FBI really came through. And again, talking about the FBI and the federal, the stuff you see on TV, the feds don't get along with the locals don't get along with the feds. I've never really worked with any federal agencies at any great length. These people were awesome. We were part of their team. The sit reps that we came to, everybody reported out. They asked us for their input, and I'm sure there was things that they didn't tell us, but they were awesome to deal with, and they really came through.
Would the FBI have been able to come forward with these totes and fill them with the tenants' most valuable items if there hadn't been a delay because of the wind? Would that have happened anyway? I'm
thinking no, because things were progressing so rapidly that I believe it was the delay, the changing of the wind. One of many miracles that I think happened during this event that was allowed people to get some of their property back. The sheriff stepped up with a trailer to put this stuff in. I believe he was the one that coordinated the returning of the property to the people. That in itself was a huge undertaking.
And to illustrate the point of how important some of these belongings were to the people, you've got something that you'd like to share with our listeners and our viewers today at
Dodge.com. One of the tenants in the apartment survived Nazi Germany. Their community, Dresden, Germany, was being bombed and burned. She was a little girl, and the only thing she was able to take with her when her family fled Nazi Germany was this little teddy bear, and that's the only thing she wanted out of her apartment. And I remember being in her apartment because her family had an antique store. And I when we did the first sweep of the apartments, I went through hers, and I remember, wow, there are some really nice antiques in here. And it broke my heart to burn everybody's stuff, but I mean, it was like a museum. So she was able to get this. She spent, her first name is Dietland. She spent 4 months in the Super 8 motel before they were able to find her an apartment in Beaver Dam. And she asked us to come over, and I believe one of the CBS affiliate out of Milwaukee did a story on her, and we went over and talked to her that day, and just an incredible person.
For those in our radio audience, it's a picture of a very small stuffed bear next to an apple, and it's
about 3 inches high, 4 inches high.
3 inches high. It's a little smaller than the apple.
Yep.
And
that's all she wanted.
She didn't fill up the tote with any of the.
I'm sure. Things. Yeah, she got more stuff, but that was it.
This is from her childhood fleeing Nazi Germany.
Absolutely.
And this is illustrative of the type of things that we're talking about. The FBI was able to go in and retrieve photographs and priceless family heirlooms, immigration papers, as you mentioned.
Right.
A small silver lining in an otherwise dark and cloudy day.
They had to make it. They had to make it an official operation, which basically insulated the city from liability. They had an operations plan, official ops plan. Everybody got together and decided that it was good enough as long as the FBI is taking responsibility. I believe they were suited up when they went in and did their sweep, so it worked out.
So, how did the operation go then, Chief?
Overall, I think it was a win. I had one of the reporters, her first name was Emily. I think she's out of one of the Green Bay area TV stations. She asked, how could this operation have gone any smoother, the day of the burn? And the good Lord, I think, was looking over us that day, because it went over pretty well. One of the other curveballs that we had is when we have a big event, we always bring in basically another fire department to stand by for us. Hustisford sends a fire engine over. I believe it was either Watertown or Fond du Lac Fire Department had an ambulance in our station just to cover all the events that happened as a matter of course, during the day. There was a residence that had a fairly significant fire that snuffed itself out during that day. So we definitely dodged a bullet on a house fire. Probably would have happened right in the middle of this. So it was just seemed like one thing after another. But all in all, everybody pulled together. Nobody got hurt. The collateral damage on the other buildings was very minimal. It's probably not more than $1,000 worth of vinyl siding that they're going to need to replace. But overall, I think things went very well.
Other than the physical actions that you undertook in the controlled burn, in some of the specific detonation and everything like that, what do you think you and your department learned from this experience?
Having the right people in the right places, delegation. Don't be afraid to reach out to your peers. Be there for your neighbors. They'll be there for you. Some of the other good things is, our people that we work with are now battle buddies, a little closer working relationship. We're keeping an eye on each other.
Where does this fit in terms of the experiences that you've had in your career?
Absolutely the most insane, crazy thing I've ever dealt with. Never in a million years would I thought I'd be dealing with something like this. Apparently only one other fire department in the country has. So but the training and the experiences that we've had led us to a successful outcome. The training that we send people to, the education, the experience, all that came together for a huge win, I believe. Nobody else besides the bomb maker was injured. We had one firefighter injured. He was bit by a cat the night we got the pets out. But again, if that's the worst of it, it was successful.
What should the public take away from this experience that was undertaken by emergency responders in the area?
Well, they can have confidence in their emergency people. Couldn't be more proud of my department. We have a huge, great working relationship with the police department. I'm grateful for that. Know that if there is a problem, we're going to put our heads together and come up with a solution, hopefully, that'll be as successful as this one. Again, I would never want to go through it again. I guess I have to say I'm not glad it happened, but I was proud to be a part of it, and it was an honor to work with the people that I worked with.
Well, Chief, I hope you never have to recount any of this except for training here in the future. I want to thank you very much for joining us on the program today and sharing the details of this incident with us.
You're welcome.
Beaver Dam Fire Chief Alan Mannel here discussing the controlled burn and the events that led up to the controlled burn of Building 109 at Village Glen, March of 2018. We'll invite our listeners, if they'd like to watch back or listen back to this program, you can go to dailydodge.com, where you can also find all of the public documents that were released, investigative reports, photographs, video above, ground level, thermal video. All of that is available at dailydodge.com if you'd like to review some of that, we encourage you to check out that website. We want to thank the fire chief for joining us once again today. We want to thank the police chief and Sergeant Eric Smeedema for joining us on Friday to talk about the police perspective of this, and everybody for joining us on the program. That is going to do it for today's community comment.
It's that time of year again for the WBEV WXRO South Central Wisconsin Career Fair being held March 12th.